Good morning, everyone. Today's lesson title originally was Our Powers of Love and Strength. What is Your Goliath was a subtitle that I added as I was working on it. In the month of February, Debra has given us some great lessons exploring the power of love. On this Sunday, our last in February, I'd like to also begin to talk of our power in March, the power of strength. First, let's look at our unity history for a quick minute to understand these 12 powers that we all talk about. Many of you have been coming to Unity for years on Sundays, taking classes and reading books. You may already understand them and how they can be applied. But maybe like me, you're only beginning to look deeper. Maybe this is your first time hearing about the 12 powers. What are they? Where did they come from? Unity was born out of the New Thought era. If asked, we say unity is practical Christianity, applied Christianity without the dogma. For example, we don't believe in sin. We would be more likely to say ego or error thinking. We also reject duality, meaning a God out there and separate from us. We speak of our oneness with God. God is love. God is omnipotent. God is divine. We are divine. We also use many different names for God. All paths to God are welcome. Take what you like. If what you hear resonates with you as your truth, please join us. In the 1800s, during the Victorian era, many people were becoming disillusioned by religion and medicine. The duality religions of a God out there watching our every move and ready to impose harsh damnation for sins, and medicine driven by symptom diagnosis and treatments that often had no effect. During this time, there were also the emerging studies of science and spirit, mind power, and oneness. A new age was beginning. The basic principles of all new thought were God, mind, thought. God is divine. There is divine law that is immutable and always applies under all circumstance without exception. Humans are divine beings living in a spiritual universe. We're physical bodies having a spiritual experience. The New Thought movement began with common threads of Jesus's teachings and other traditions, ancient wisdom, transcendentalism, and the mind cure movement. There were people like Ralph Waldo Emerson and Phineas Parkhurst Quimby and many others who were considered the pioneers of New Thought. They were followed later by Ernest Holmes and Mary Baker Eddy. Eddy was a long-serving student and employee of Quimby, and she founded the Christian Scientist Church. All New Thought combines various amounts of meditation, prayer, diet, exercise, and holistic or wholeness approach. New mindful practices were being born. In 1880, our co-founders, Myrtle and Charles Fillmore, who were both well-educated and were looking for healing, attended a lecture given by a student of Mary Baker Eddy, E.B. Weeks. Myrtle came away with a profound epiphany. I am a child of God. I cannot inherit illness. I am a child of God. I cannot inherit illness. We do not have a complete transcript of that lecture, but our unity history through Myrtle's many, many letters tells us that this lecture on that very fateful evening changed the course of both their lives and began the journey of what we now study and follow, Unity Worldwide Ministries. We've heard of Myrtle's lifelong suffering from tuberculosis and how sickly she was her whole life up to that point. We know that Myrtle was very moved by what she heard E.B. Weeks say. She understood that she needed to love her body, not curse it. She began to see her body as divine. She began praying for every part of her body, that it was perfect in every way, and she thanked it. She focused all her love and energy on every cell, every organ, and knew that if she loved her body, she could be healed. She prayed every day, and in about 2 years, she was cured. She also prayed with and for others. A small weekly, then daily gathering started in their home and grew. However, they never set out to create a church. It was around this time Emma Curtis Hopkins, a student of Mary Baker Eddy and an ex-Christian scientist, teacher, and homeopath, joined them, and they began a magazine called Modern Thought. They started receiving letters requesting prayer, and in 1890 created what we now know as Silent Unity, a 24-hour prayer service that's still praying today. Charles had spent his time meditating, praying, studying, and writing about their mind cure. He approached the Bible from a metaphysical viewpoint, as we do in Unity. He was interpreting the parables of Jesus and his 12 apostles, and metaphysically, he saw that each had distinct human qualities. Peter had his faith, Thomas understanding, Matthew his will, etc. We all have these characteristics, attributes, or powers. It is divine law, whether we believe it or not, whether we see them all or activate them all, they are there. Some are developed, some are overdeveloped, some under, some are in balance. When they're out of balance, we experience fear, pain, suffering, and separateness. When activated and in balance, we're happier, healthier, and we experience our true nature, our oneness with God and others, our higher consciousness or Christ consciousness. Charles studied each of the apostles. He then applied a power, a part of the body, and a color. He focused on these and meditated on them for hours on end. Later in Unity, each month was represented by a power. February is love, March is strength. Strength is represented by the Apostle Andrew, located in the small of our back and by the color of spring green. The attributes or abilities as described by Charles Fillmore, Paul Hasselbeck, and others are the ability to endure, stay the course, persist, persevere. And by Linda Martella Whitsett as stability, courage, tenacity. From 1 Samuel chapter 17, there's a story of David and Goliath. We have all heard of it. Even I, who never read the Bible growing up or learned about it, am familiar with it. I will paraphrase it for you now. King Saul and his army of Israelites, including the 3 older brothers of David, were readying for battle with the Philistines. The Philistines were lined up, and when they parted, out walked Goliath. He was over 10 feet tall, wearing a bronze helmet and massive armor. He had a huge spear and a sword and was threatening anyone to come fight him. He said he could kill any man with one swipe of his sword. King Saul, the army believed him. They were terrified, and they could see that what he said was true. Goliath came out shouting and taunting at them every morning for days. He wanted someone to fight, and he declared that anyone who approached would be killed. Once he killed this man, all Israelites would surrender and become slaves to the Philistines. They tried to ignore him, but he kept coming back every morning. The army gathered to try and figure out who was the strongest and who would go fight. David, a shepherd boy who was there bringing food to his brothers, said, "I'll fight him." They pushed him aside. "This is none of your business. You're too young, too small and inexperienced to fight." David said, "I'm not afraid. I kill lions and bears that threaten my sheep. God is my strength and God protects me." We all know how it turned out. This small young boy with no armor defeated this great big giant with a stone and a slingshot. How brave, how clever. Really? Does it sound true? Okay, maybe. Maybe the bully does fall with one precisely placed stone to the forehead. What does this all have to do with the powers of love and strength, you ask? Metaphysics. We look at the story from a metaphysical approach, like in Unity. We have a wealth of information that applies to all of us. This is a very common human experience we all face. We have all experienced being David, up against what appears to be a terrifying and insurmountable giant enemy. In our metaphysical Bible dictionary, David is represented by love. He is referred to as a type of Christ. He represents divine love in human consciousness. Goliath, a giant and a Philistine, is also very revealing. Goliath is represented by ideas or thoughts, but he's also a Philistine, and Philistines are symbolized as strangers, foreigners, and apart from, specifically foreign or different from God. Philistines were opposed to all true spiritual discipline, the unevolved consciousness or sense man. So if Goliath is ideas or thoughts and Philistine, then error thoughts, ego, bragging, untruths, loud, and so terrifying that King Saul and all his army wanted to give up and run away or hope that Goliath would just go away if they ignored him. We have all had to deal with a Goliath. In your life, Goliath can be something new that you're unsure of, maybe skateboarding or surfing. Something that looks like fun or interesting and others are enjoying it, but you're not sure you can do it, or you're really scared to try. Snorkeling was like that for me. When I first moved to Key West, I loved going boating. I really loved being on the water and said yes every time I was asked. But I was not a confident swimmer, and every time I tried to snorkel, I would hyperventilate. It was terrifying and baffling for me because everyone else seemed to do it easily. But if I put my face in the water, my brain thought I would drown. It took many tries and some swimming lessons to get comfortable enough in the water to trust that I could breathe through the snorkel. The thought was, I'm going to die. I'll drown if I put my face in the water and breathe. I had to change my thoughts, convince my brain that I would not drown. I am safe. I can do this. I had to persist. I had to persevere. Eventually I did and spent several years working on a charter boat, even becoming a captain and teaching others how to snorkel. It opened a whole new world for me and I loved it. This is years before I found Unity or even heard of the 12 powers. I was naturally using my power of strength. We all have these 12 powers, whether we're aware of them or not. Our powers could also be underdeveloped or overdeveloped, and this causes us to be out of balance. When we're in balance, we're connected deeper with our Christ consciousness, and we feel loved and at peace. When we're out of balance, we experience suffering, fear, separation from God and others. Examples of undeveloped strength is being wishy-washy or no backbone, easily manipulated by others. Examples of an overdeveloped strength is being stubborn or willful, unteachable or obstinate. Examples of undeveloped love are depression, disharmony, or chaos. An overdeveloped love could be needy, lustful, jealous. In balance, strength is to endure, stay the course, be persistent, to be stable and steady. In balance, love is to harmonize, unify, desire, attractiveness, and to have affection for. Another Goliath for me was fear of authority figures and specifically bullies. When confronted, I become paralyzed with fear, shut down and silent. I have memories as a child running from bullies or later not confronting someone who was trying to dominate me. Learning to speak up for myself and that I would not die when I did has taken years of practice, and I've still not mastered it. Sometimes these were bosses or clients, sometimes employees or coworkers, significant others, friends or neighbors. It's been a repeated pattern of my life. The error thought is that if someone disagrees with me, or worse, is angry with me, they do not love me, or I'm not lovable. This is an error thought. I am lovable. I deserve love, and so do you. I practice replacing these error thoughts with denials and affirmations. I still get scared on occasion, but I push through. I stand up straight, say what I need to say. I'm respectful of the other person too. They may need to be heard. I can listen without reacting. What I've learned is that for most people in my life today, people who love me and want to hear what I have to say, they want me to be honest with them so they can have clear communication and we can have mutual respect. I have strong, healthy relationships with others who also have the room to disagree with me. Activating the power of love, divine love in me, means that I love myself and others. Expressing that divine love means that I'm expressing my Christ consciousness. Activating the power of strength in me means that I'm steadfast and stable. I hold tight to the universal truth of divine law. I face Goliath with my strength of conviction and courage. Now, courage doesn't mean I'm not afraid. I can still be terrified, but I have the strength to do it anyway. My error thoughts can be paralyzing, but unity through prayer and meditation has helped me to quiet those negative thoughts. Through practice, I no longer put myself down or make myself small just to be liked or not rock the boat. Recently, I found that sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and it seems like all the error thoughts that I ignored that day are hanging out at the foot of my bed. They all gather up and they say, "Hey, Debra, glad you're up. We've been thinking and we want to talk to you." Oy, it could ruin a whole night's sleep if I let them. And in the past, it has. I've stayed up letting those thoughts beat the daylight out of me, worried about something that might or might never happen. Now I've got tools. Denials and affirmations work well. I like short, simple mantras. Some of my favorites I like to repeat over and over. With my hand on my chest, I am love. I am divine. I am peace. I also love that pre-med song that Kevin and the music team just did. Our thoughts are prayers, and we are always praying. I seek a higher consciousness, a state of peacefulness, and know that God is always there. We can change our thoughts. However, what if these repeating thoughts or ideas are not hurtful and not negative? What if it's just a great big idea whispering to us about change or a new direction? Last week, I'd been writing and thinking about this talk, and then Debra's lesson about knock me over. She was talking about shining your light, not hiding under a basket, and about facing fears to do something new. Like Myrtle, I too have been cured, and the pandemic has given me the time to rearrange my whole life. I'm now hearing ideas and thoughts that scare me, and they're moving me in new directions. I'm barely able to see clearly exactly what they are. And like Debra talked about, I'm not ready. I'm scared. I'm making excuses why I can't do this or that, or why I don't want this in my life. But they keep pulling and calling to me. Unity has taught me to trust that Spirit has best intentions for me and all of you. I keep showing up, persistent and steady, facing Goliath as they step forward in my thoughts. I'm so grateful to Unity, to all of you, my Unity family, the tools and study material that help me to approach life from Christ consciousness. So, what is your Goliath? Take some time this week to activate your powers of love and strength. Is your Goliath a great big bully or error thought that needs to be faced and stood up to? Or is it a new idea that you've been ignoring and maybe you don't feel worthy of? Explore it, meditate on it, trust Spirit, and know your oneness with God. God is strength. God is love. You are love. And so it is.